So, welcome to the new format of the Left Footers. It's been a little while since we've gathered together. And it's been sort of a quiet world, right? Nothing's been going on. It's, everyone's sort of just enjoying quarantine, right?
Yeah.
Nothing really to report, right? No major crises that people are going through or anything of that type. Everyone's just knitting.
Nothing can happen here. Yeah.
Oh.
Well, we don't use any media to talk to people, right? So then, just knitting.
Yep. Just knitting.
I've been thinking, what if this had happened, 25 years ago? When people were just getting dial-up internet.
Our entire universe kind of feels like it's falling apart. So what part of it happened 25 years ago?
I was gonna say, what if this, what if we ended up on quarantine like this 25 years ago, when we you didn't have, the odd person had dial-up internet, but you would have been stuck at home for the last 3 months. We would have had to actually phone people to communicate with them, or mail home newsletters and things like that. We'd all be depending on like CNN or CBC to be giving us all the information about everything, because that would have been it. And it's interesting to think about how different things would have looked then. Like, I've thought about this in the context of my students, like what they would have been dealing with. But, can you imagine what it would have been like 25 years ago? And it's kind of strange to think about, because I don't know that things would be the way that they are. Because how do you pass out health orders when you don't have these means to kind of push things out instantly the way that we do? How do you communicate as a church the fact that we've stopped masses and then we've started masses up again? You'd have people banging down the doors to the church rectory and demanding to see Father Roger as to why things are the way they are. And then there's a lot of bad things that we wouldn't know about that have happened, and a lot of things where things could have gotten better that we wouldn't know about what have happened. You could think about that on a local level with, how are we caring for people in nursing homes? And then you could look at that on a much more global level where things seem to be going crazy. Yeah, that was not the segue I had all thought about that. I'm sorry, that was the wrong way to go with this. I can see by the looks on your faces, this is not a good segue for you.
I just don't know where I need a question, Mike. Father Roger, are you even there?
I am.
His camera is frozen.
I am perfectly frozen.
Everybody knows the feeling where you actually aren't sure if someone's thinking. This is what I've learned about in quarantine. On a Zoom chat, is someone just thinking, or is their video frozen? And then if you ask them too many times, they get really annoyed because they were actually thinking. Or you just sound like an idiot being like, are you there? Are you there? Are you there? That's what I've learned in quarantine. Hopefully a few deeper topics, but really, really the most important ones. Also, how to give a thumbs up and a high five or clapping. That's Zoom. Yeah.
I've learned about TikTok.
Oh.
Only now?
Well, I knew it existed, but I never
Where were you
signed up
in
for one.
2018? This offends me greatly.
Mike, can you tell me how you started a TikTok? Is this what you're telling the world?
Yeah, I started a TikTok and then I quit. I decided that can anything good come out of Nazareth is basically how I feel about TikTok right now. Because all of my followers ended up being like teenage girls. And so all my suggested videos were videos of teenage girls. And this is not something that anybody needs to be seeing. It's sort of like, this is not good for my soul, but I'm like, man, this is not good for theirs either. Which, I think my being 40 years old is now showing, I think is what it comes down to. Get off my lawn, right? Like, this is kind of how I feel. But Father Mark,
you did on your
the token old guy on the panel.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Actually, just trying to assuage my ego by saying gentle things. The other thing that happened to me in quarantine is somebody stole my identity.
What?
Somebody stole my identity. Yeah. I got an email from the Canada Revenue Agency on Sunday night saying, hey, you changed your direct deposit information. I'm like, what? So I assumed somebody had cracked a password or something like that. So I jumped in and changed it back. And then yesterday morning, I had $4,000 in the bank I wasn't supposed to have because they had signed up for the Canada Emergency Response Benefit thing for 2 months worth. So so I got to spend an entire day phoning banks and the government and the police and various other people. And this is probably the first time in my life I've ever been a victim of a crime. Like it's been a really strange experience to ponder that, because, a lot of times we look at the news and we think about what's going on, and it's like, well, whatever. I mean, it's awful. But then, I mean, this is like the smallest crime in the world, because in the end, I didn't lose anything. And we caught it quick enough that
we're trying to give money back to the government.
It's already been sent back. So I debated buying a flat screen, but Jen said no. And, we sent the money back to the government, or we sent the money back, and we're going to kind of resolve this. And, it'll be a real adventure if I ever have to open another bank account or sign up for a new credit card, because like everything is now like locked down so that nobody can do anything without like literally phoning me and verifying that I am who I am. So
don't change your phone number either.
But it's a strange thing to consider yourself the victim of a crime. And like I say, not a major one by any stretch, but it's kind of a reminder sometimes, I think, because I've lived in suburbs my whole life, how really sheltered I am from the things that people do.
I was going to say I lost my credit card, but that wasn't anybody's fault. That was my fault. I put it in my pocket, and I just was being a dumb person and lost it. So it's a different type of event.
Isn't there like a TV commercial of that exact thing for like TD credit Visa?
Have TV, man. Why would I have TV?
That is literally the plot of a commercial I just saw like the other month. Oh, pizza delivery guy stole my credit card. Nope. Oh, it's over here. Oh, okay. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure my wife recycled her credit card last week too, with the receipt from whatever store it was. It was all in her pocket, so she dropped it. It's okay. We'll just ask Father Roger to order all our Amazon stuff for us, and we'll be good to go.
You know about my Prime account?
Well, you're a pink. Priest income, no kids.
I don't know how to take that. I'd rather not take that. No.
Yeah.
You can have it back, Mike. That, yeah.
Oh. Well, have you ever heard the term like DINK, like the dual income, no kids? Like that's why people can travel. And so my brother-in-law often refers to the fact that he's a pink. You want me to just stop talking? Is that what?
No.
Father Roger, have you learned anything in quarantine? Any fun things you've taught yourself?
I think the thing I've learned, I don't know. Saying those words a lot more than I ever did before. And I think that just goes on everything in these last number of months. I don't know. I don't know how we're going to go back to normal. I don't know what normal can be after this. I don't know where we're headed. I don't know what the solution is to systemic racism in our Western societies. I don't know what the solution is to root out that evil. I don't know what we need to do to be able to get out of the accruing debt that our country seemed to be in. I don't know many things. And if there's anything that I've learned, is to say those words with a lot more humility during this period of time. Because I want to say things, but realizing how complex these situations are, and the fact that everyone wants a soundbite or just a slogan to be thrown out, I can't offer that, because I can't offer that as an authentic response. My authentic response is, I just don't know. I don't know what to do in the face of evil. And I say that not saying that I don't know, as a priest, how I'm supposed to respond, because I do. I know ultimately it is in the foundation of prayer and talking with the person of God, on that most intimate way of suffering through these trials, and sort of assigning even my care and my joys and my sorrows in that journey with God. But there are moments when faced to another human person, I lack the words, and the only words that do come up are, I don't know. So I've shared those words way too many times, I feel, with my parishioners, with people I've talked about all these situations going on in our world, with maybe just the sense of what's going on with quarantine and a lot of people's feelings on all of that. And ultimately it falls to the point where I don't know.
I heard you also learned that bats like to live in your parish.
That they do. And unfortunately, once more, I don't know how to get rid of bats in a parish, because I don't want Stettler, Christ the King, to be the second epicenter of the bat-related coronavirus. So I am trying to nip it in the bud. Oh, I think Mike has.
See, what you need to do is dig a cave under the church, okay?
Oh, there is.
You need to park your car under there, set up a whole computer system and your superhero suit that you put on when you go out to fight crime at night. Because we could call you from now on Bat Priest.
If you excuse me for 1 second.
Father Mike is now leaving the building. Or Father Roger? Father Mike, I just turned you into a father. Oh my goodness. Wow, Father.
There you go.
I think I can help with this.
I have the bat signal.
It's the bat signal on it. Oh. No, he's not.
This is that is so awesome thing.
Podcast
and the man does not want to look.
Literally.
See? Oh, okay. That's all I needed. This is gold.
I like that was at your fingertips. You didn't move out of your chair, really. You turned off the light, but wow. Yep. Amazing.
Yep.
My big question is, if you're Batman, which of our young priests becomes Robin?
The guy who has robins in his parish. Duh. Which
would be?
I don't know, because I have bats, so I deal with bats. I'm Batman.
It's interesting, Father Roger, that you mentioned that you didn't want a sound clip, and then the only thing I kept hearing you say was the sound clip, I don't know. But I'm sure everybody has had to, everybody's been changing, and we're finding this new normal that people kind of hate and feel uncomfortable with their whatever it's called. But I think I don't know has two different feelings. For me personally, the I don't know what's coming next has been super freeing, which I don't think is many people's experience. And so I'm not sure why I all of a sudden have this freeing experience, but I don't have a job. I don't know what I'm doing for the next 4 months. And I don't have children, so I don't have to take care of them. I did spend the last month taking cohorting with my sister and her kids and her family, so that was really nice. But the I don't know was actually super freeing, because it's I don't know, it's out of my control. I actually can't control this thing. But then there are some things where you're I want to control it, and I want to know what I don't know. And I'm not really sure how to swim through the different feelings in that statement. So for instance, I don't know when we're going to get back to a normal and what normal is going to look like. I'm just going to do what I think I can do and then go from there. But that has to do with my life and how I'm going to live it. But talking about racism and how to root out racism, I don't know how to do that either. But I just can't sit there and say like, oh, whatever, it's going to be fine. I'm just going to keep on going with my life. I think like the I don't know in that circumstance means I have to actually, action needs to take place.
Yeah, what I think I mean by the I don't know is not necessarily a paralyzing state of being where I am frozen up, which I might be frozen up. No, I'm not. Okay. Where I might be frozen up into inaction. Because, and this is something that we heard from almost day one, back way in March, we're in unprecedented times, uncharted waters. And realizing that still calls us towards action. Whatever it might be. It's a new frontier. It's a new frontier that we're called to blaze through, and it's going to bring its own challenges and complications. Yeah, I don't know. 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 I don't know much at all.
If you think about what led us to get into ministry, okay, you could look at, you know, kind of the issues we see outside of us in the world. And I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I find myself wondering if we're witnessing the fall of an empire right now. You know, if this will be one of those moments in history where you step back and you're like, wow, you know, Rome sure was strong 100 years ago, but, you know, and wherever we end up. But why did we all get into ministry? You know, we don't know what to do, but it becomes a question of, you know, we don't know what to do to solve all the problems in the church, all the problems in our communities, all the problems in even the demographic we serve. When you talk about Sara and I working with young people, and it is overwhelming at times to see all of these things. I mean, that was one of the eye openers for me on TikTok is, I think I knew this already. I knew what a lot of the kids that I work with are facing, but to sort of see it through their eyes was a bit of a wake up call. And I could sort of sit there and say, well, this is systemic. You know, they are being systemically told to try and promote themselves, to advertise, you know, essentially to try and make themselves something, a consumable in the videos that they're posting themselves. So how do I come back after that? Well, this will inform the ministry that I will do with them when these unprecedented times become precedented again, and we have the chance to do things like we would normally do. And I wonder a little bit when you look at all of these big issues with the world. Well, I mean, we don't know how to answer the systemic ones, but how do we deal, first of all, with the ones in our own hearts? Because I think that's one of the realities is always a step back. How have I contributed to blank? And then, you know, that conversion happens. And then how do I, as a minister, challenge those under my pastoral care, under my spiritual care? You know, obviously, Father Roger, you've got a bigger charge than we do. But how do we then try and draw them to conversion, not just in the, hey, here's Jesus, but in almost the insidious ones that kind of leave themselves rooted in there.
And I think that's the thing as well that I'll spin off. I don't know my heart. I mean, I was going to make the joke that, well, Mike, are you who you say you are with this whole identity theft? How do I know that this is you, Mike? Well, I'm just going to flip that question to myself. How do I know that I am me? And I've been reflecting on that a little bit, and I'll go on to this little quote, which is probably going to be boring, but, you know, I think it's still a good material. It's from the Russian writer Alexander Solzhenitsyn, which is a better pronunciation that I've had in the last number of weeks, the writer of the Gulag Archipelago. He has this line: if only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being, and who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? During the life of any heart, this line keeps changing place. Sometimes it is squeezed one way by exuberant evil, and sometimes it shifts to allow enough space for good to flourish. One and the same human being is, at various ages, under various circumstances, totally different human being. At times, he was close to being a devil, at times to sainthood. But his name doesn't change, and to that name we ascribe the whole lot, good and evil. Socrates taught us, know thyself. Confronted by the pit into which we are about to toss those who have done us harm, we halt, stricken dumb. It is after all only because of the way things worked out that they were executioners and we weren't. From good to evil is one quaver, says the proverb, and correspondingly, from evil to good. Reading the Gulag Archipelago, I think, has given me a greater appreciation of the state of communism that was the social experiment of the Soviet Union. And not going into too much politics, I think Soyuzhishin has an excellent study of the human condition, even during this time of revolution, even during this time of the beginning of the 20th century, the time of great potential, but also of great evil that has occurred. And I think he comes to that point that, of course, you know, he inherits from scripture, where it is that constant battle within the human heart of good versus evil. And sometimes, I would even dare say, when we do evil, we think that we're doing good. But that's the insidious nature of evil, that it can disguise itself in half-truths or with only a sprinkling of the truth and try to portray itself as actual truth in various ways. I mean, even if we may not struggle with the sin of pride due to physical appearance, you know, vanity, vainglory, as Saint Ignatius of Loyola would have said, there is the danger of spiritual pride. You know, just because we may not be corporate businessmen, you know, involved in white collar crime, that doesn't mean we can't struggle with the sin of corruption within our own soul, spiritual corruption, and trying to sort of manipulate God, you know, through various means and ways. I don't know if it can be an easy answer to say that one knows oneself until, you know, until you go through everything and nothing is left. I think COVID, in that way, has been a good experience, and I say that, you know, delicately, but a learning experience of our own selves. How do we deal with things when we're left more isolated than we ever want to be? How do we deal with ourselves? How do we deal with others? How do we deal with problems? And where, you know, given sort of the precedents before, like I would have said, oh yeah, you know, if I had to do nothing for 3 months, that would be the best, you know, feet up, relax, nothing to do, no worries, no stress, Hakuna Matata. But what I realized after a couple of weeks, I suck at this.
No Hakuna, no Matata.
I think that it's the opposite experience with kids in the house, because, you know, if anything, we have to do more stuff, because all the things that used to kind of take or kind of animate their life is gone. You know, they're not going to school anymore. Music lessons are canceled. Soccer teams were canceled. Gymnastics classes were canceled. And it's been fascinating because my house backs onto a path that goes through Stony Plain, and how many families I've seen walking and biking and everything else over these days. And, you know, there's been a real gift. And I wonder a little bit, will COVID restore? I mean, obviously there's a lot of families that have struggled, you know, in all of this being home, and where there's abuse, you know, it's gone underground in a lot of ways. And that's awful. You know, I mean, you know, I don't want to mitigate that at all. There's been, though, for some families that I think have gotten disconnected, there's been almost you've been forced to reconnect in a lot of different ways. But I want to go back to your comment about the heart, because I think that you made me think of something I spent a bit of time doing. I rewatched the Lord of the Rings trilogy extended edition with my two oldest kids.
You have the time.
Which they loved.
Yeah.
And I remember watching the Two Towers and being like, all right, Timothy, this is the greatest battle scene that had been filmed until the next movie came out. When Helm's Deep, the battle for Helm's Deep happens, that's an epic battle. And then when you've got the defense of Gondor, like that's, a whole other level. And then, when Aragorn makes his speech, that's part of your favorite video, Father Roger, it's not this day, and Timothy's like, this is great. Like you could sort of see him, coming to life. So I picked up the books again because I realized I haven't read the book since 2000. Somehow having 5 kids, getting 2 degrees, and all the things that have gone along with that, I've been carrying the books around with me for 20 years, but I haven't opened them up. And I forgot how brilliant Tolkien's writing is, and how Peter Jackson captures, maybe 30% of that in the movies now, which is great because it's hard to translate a lot of greatness from a book to a movie. But is there a character that better demonstrates this than Smeagol? You can think obviously of the scene where he's like, go away and never come back. And he's talking to himself, when he decides he's going to be good and be with Frodo. But is there a character that demonstrates, he's not altogether evil? In fact, the only thing that they really emphasize in the whole story that's altogether evil is the ring itself. Because the orcs are twisted elves, and twisted the goblins are, it's kind of a twisting on a good. Smeagol himself is the man divided in so many ways, and you see it in kind of his schizophrenia, where he talks to himself, where Smeagol is the good and Gollum is kind of the dark. And I think part of what Tolkien was hammering home is how this is each of us. I mean, he makes Smeagol is a hobbit for all intents and purposes. He's a hobbit gone the other way versus what Frodo and Bilbo and Merry and Pippin and Sam are. You might even say we are all Smeagol. A wise man told me that once.
Sarah, what say you?
What say I? I think it's like becoming evident that I'm very certain that this is not a bad thing, that like maybe quarantine and now the beginning discussion of racism and Black Lives Matter is like uprooting a lot of things, but it's like just shedding light on our life. Like it's just made our life change enough that we can see it. And like if you look at Smeagol, like Smeagol seems happy just doing his thing. He thinks nothing's wrong. Well, I haven't read the book, so don't kill me. But like you watch him change. Sorry, Mike's having a panic attack over here. He's not. But you watch him change when he encounters something new. And so like for me, this something new, like I was working in a parish, and I like love working in the parish, right? The parish wasn't able to hire or pay for me anymore, so I no longer have that job, and it like was sad and was a part of me that like really I had to start to grapple with, like how much was I putting who I was into my work, and just all this sort of thing. And then like now I have all this free time, and as a younger single person, like how am I gonna use that time well? And like I think I would love to say I want to go like volunteer and stuff, but like 1, you can't do that during quarantine. 2, I don't know if I would. So it like, but just encountering these new things, like I'll be honest with the two of you, like I had thought of racism before and I knew it was present, but I never thought that was like my fight to fight. Like I thought I just needed to not be racist with who I was, but like I haven't had an abortion before, and yet that's something I feel like I have a view to fight on, or like there's just things that like I haven't had, like it doesn't affect me, but it I will fight on, and I have to conversation in. And so I think it's like totally evident now that like I have to be a part of the conversations, especially like in those conversations of sin that like aren't being recognized as sins. And I think racism is one of those. But basically what I'm just trying to say is quarantine has shed light. And it was interesting because I listened to Father Roger's episode about the Holy Spirit, the last episode, Left Footer's episode. And I was like, I already know about the Holy Spirit. But what I was thinking of was like, maybe this is the Holy Spirit. It was really ironic because you guys talked about like, ironic might not be the word, the Holy Spirit emblazing our world. That kind of happened a little bit. And there's nothing that I think that is right. I think we have to respect each other's property, but I do not think it's a bad thing that our world was woken up by some of these horrific sins that we've like let happen and let slide. So yeah, I think like shedding the light and kind of us all being Smeagol, but trying to now grapple with whatever we're dealing with is good.
Can I ask you the same question that was asked early on in the Bible? One of the first interrogations that is present there. Are you your brother's keeper?
Yes. Is this a trick question, Father?
No.
Yeah, we're the body of Christ. We when it's in the Bible, it says when one part of us hurts, when one part is hurt, the other part suffers. Like in our body, I always tell kids, like when your finger hurts, as a child, like you're incapacitated, like you can't move. You're like, I poked my finger. It sounds dumb, but like when someone's hurting, we should, if our hearts are like conformed to kind of like what we would say God wants us, then our hearts to be is that we should care and be our brother's keepers.
There's an interesting experience that comes with owning a house, and Father Roger, you get, I think, a taste of that in the fact that you've got to manage multiple buildings, in that often things will kind of insidiously work their way in. Water being one of the ones you got to watch out for a lot. If the drainage around your
Don't forget bats.
We've already decided you're turning into Batman once we figure out who the Robin priest is. So, that'll be fine. But when water works its way in, it ruins things. And it absolutely ruins things. And I learned in our first house that I was far happier if the water worked its way in quickly and we found it. Because if it happens quickly, you can, it's a flood and you can clear everything out. Because if you don't catch it right away, there's rot, there's rot on the foundation, there's mold that makes my kids sick. Like there's a whole lot of little things that can happen if you're not able to catch these things. And so, it's stressful as all get out when you got to deal with the flood issue. And I had two minor water issues in my old house. And both times it was like, you got to be kidding me, because it turned into, a 2 week long project to remedy how the water got in there in the first place. And then you kind of went from there. But I'd rather know, because then I can fix it. And I think in a lot of ways, what's come to light over these past weeks is some of the insidiousness that's worked its way into our culture. It's not as though this wasn't there before. I mean, when I was young, there was the Rodney King issue with the LAPD back in the day. And, and that brought about some change. And I mean, the police often get, I guess, singled out for this because they become kind of the face of racism. And to be fair, it's much like saying, if we say every priest is a racist, or sorry, every police officer is a racist, it's like saying every priest is an abuser. The reality is of the however many hundreds of thousands of priests and police officers in the world, it's a small fragment who do wrong. But a small fragment that does wrong can still do great harm. And we have a responsibility to kind of try and bring it up. And, again, it can kind of whittle its way in slowly, and we have to deal with the fallout and the damage that comes from that. And it can come in a wave, which is, I think we're seeing a wave right now kind of go through. And ideally, I think, Sarah, you make a really good point. It's not just a question of saying, well, I'm not being racist. It's, am I enabling it? Do I stand by idly when I hear these things? Do we let others get away with it? You know, and that's something that a conversation we've had amongst my staff in one of my schools is we hear these statements, you know, and we have a responsibility to stand up and to do something about it.
Mhm.
Because if we say nothing, well, then we're party to what's going on.
Mhm. And I've tried to spend, I think, like, we were talking about what we're gonna bring up today, and I was like, we have to talk about racism, because all I've learned in the last 2 weeks, not all I've learned, I promise you, I've tried to learn more things, but like, the worst thing you could do is not talk about it. And our very diverse cohort here, we're not diverse, and like, we now see that as a thing that, like, we're diverse because I'm the token woman. but no, I'm just joking.
I'm the token married guy. No, sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying that it doesn't mean that we're exempt. Like, because we don't have diversity means, like, when I'm talking with my white friends does not mean, or Caucasian friends, does not mean we shouldn't be having the conversations, you know? Like, actually, it's the exact opposite. We need to be having the conversations. Like, not saying that we know anything, but like calling it out within each other. Because if I'm not gonna, like, I don't know, I just feel like I have a duty to not let it, not react to it, but rather, like, try to discuss it at this time and stage. And yeah.
If I can just jump off of that. Sorry, are you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. No, I don't want to. It's hard in this venue to make sure that we're doing it properly, because I can't see your whole body language in a moment. But I think that when you look at the fruits of anything we do, any work of evangelization, any work of formation, any work of conversion, it, you know, you kind of look at the way that people try and be, you know, YouTube influencers and TikTok famous and whatever else it might be. And that's fine. But the place where real change happens most of the time are, you know, first of all, in this human heart that we don't know. But second of all, it's in those conversations that happen in our small groups when we kind of push things a little bit further. I think I can think of the effectiveness I've had in youth ministry over the years. And it's interesting when a mutual friend of all of ours, who is now a priest, talks about the holy hour that I started hosting once a week when I was a parish. The last couple of years I was a parish youth minister, and he'd show up after work and sleep through the holy hour most of the time. But how important, you know, often it was just him and I and maybe one other person sitting for this holy hour. But because he came, because I knew he was coming, I would make a point of not skipping it. And because he knew I was going to be there waiting for him, he would make a point of not skipping it. And this turned into, you know, a big stepping stone on his priestly vocation. You think of kind of those individual conversations that you have with somebody after the group is done, after youth group is done, or in between masses. And this is where change happens in us. I mean, it always, you know, you watch movies and you have like that scene in the Blues Brothers where, you know, James Brown is on stage, you know, and he's kind of, and, you know, and then Jake has kind of this conversion experience, you know, right from the stage. And, you know, those happen sometimes, but I think more often it's the word made flesh, you know, when we're talking face to face with somebody. I think when people are struggling with these things, the fact that they know those who are leaders are struggling with them too, and you can have that one-on-one conversation. This is where change happens, I think, more often than at a rally or something, you know, or a large scale event.
I'm gonna challenge that, because if change only happens in our hearts, then we're screwed. I think change needs to happen in so many more places. I was listening to you might have heard of Ascension Presents, or Ascension. Sorry, they've changed their name. Anyway, and Ave Maria Explorers actually is doing a great series. About a podcast. It's a podcast, and you can find it on their website. Anyway, there was one episode, and Father Josh Johnson was just bringing up some things of ways there's systemic racism in the States. And there's things like in some schools in the States, they had like people couldn't go to school with braids. Girls couldn't wear braids to school. Well, like, he was like, and there's literally I don't know the story, but I'm just retelling the story. Like that, just because I changed my own heart that I'm okay with having braids in the school does not mean that the racism is going to change. Do you know what I mean? So some things need I do think some conversations do need to happen and need to be bigger, and laws need to be changed and all this sort of stuff. But like, I think it's a fair point for us to say, like, it starts with us. But yeah.
Let me maybe restate that. Try that a different way, because I'm not saying that we don't need to have big scale conversations, because otherwise, what's the point of having a left footers show, right? Otherwise, it's just us getting to hang out together in a pool, or imagining that we're in a pool.
Isn't that fun though? I like that.
But I mean, ultimately, what's the point of doing any of that, or going to mass on Sunday in the homilies that Father Roger puts 72 hours into every week, and whatever else it might be. But I mean, I think there is a point to that. I think you have to have these large conversations. What I'm saying is, I think that the progress happens when people when they hear it and then they make the change. And like I say, I'd say some of the biggest fruit I've seen is the biggest fruit I've seen in people's lives is those one-on-one conversations, those small group conversations, like what you were talking about, you with your friends saying, we need to do this, more than, me posting a video anonymously of myself on YouTube saying, hey, let me rant about this thing that I'm upset about, and what happens is all the people who already agree with me like it and share it, and it's not, and then somebody jumps on the comment section. And I think there are exceptions obviously to that, but very rarely do we convert by that means. Whereas I think the conversion and the change happens in these smaller conversations. Does that make more sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is not an excuse not to do all of those things.
Like for instance, if you want to change a law, who's the group that's deciding to change the law? Their hearts need to be changed as well. Like, just because a law is proposed is necessary, but also their hearts need to change. So I'm gonna give it to you. I'll back off.
There was a wise rabbi a few centuries ago who spoke to multitudes, did all these miracles, but the real difference was these 11 hearts he changed. Just don't know if you ever heard of him.
No, I don't know who you're talking about.
Okay.
Nicodemus?
You look kind of like Father Roger.
Was it Nick?
Well, bigger beard, probably. No glasses. I think, a little bit of a synthesis of both of your thoughts is honestly just maybe chewing over that idea that Aristotle gives us, in that, humanity, a human being, is a political animal, right? We are the only ones who gather in the polis, in the city, as it were. We're not just, agrarian farmers, because the ancient Greeks saw that, we're developing towards cities where we have people living in close proximity to one another and forming government, is what we are called to do. So I think we need to truly, sort of invest our thought into that, because it always begins with those interpersonal, intimate connections, as Mike brought up with that certain young priest going off to come to the commitment of coming for adoration, to sleep there. But it reaches, as Sara was saying, to that higher level of governance and of the effect of laws, and sort of wide-reaching governance in that way. All of this is interconnected, right? And I know, in our desire to We need all of it. Okay. We can't focus on one aspect of a dead animal to bring it back to life. If we only focused on, well, if we got the liver working on this, dead cow, then everything will, start working. I mean, yeah, the liver's important, but so is everything else interconnected. Horrible analogy, bad example. It falls apart quite easily. But to actually get something that is good and life-giving back to what it's ultimately called to, it takes all the parts working together. And granted, I say that and I feel at times overwhelmed. What do you mean I have to be, focusing on the small details, but also having the big picture in mind? What I think that means is ultimately we need to come together as a society, as people living together, and realize we are bound together and we are called to work together towards this. We can't figure it out by ourselves. One system, one program, one march, one intimate conversation is not going to be enough. Everyone needs to work together in that front. But it is, in some ways, not shying away from having that political conversation and having, dare I say, religion, that which is the most intimate part of you, influence your politics, your behaviors for everyone else. It's a tall order. It's a tall order because we have been raised up in a society that wants to segregate and pigeonhole all these human qualities away from each other. You can't have politics and you can't have religion, at the dinner table. Well, if you can't have the most intimate and the most wide-reaching conversations, no wonder we have the system that we do that perpetuates fear, anger, hatred towards one another. If we can't have the conversation, if we shy away from the challenges that, maybe I will be challenged, maybe I am not right in all things at all times, Once more, that's sort of that question. I'm called to maybe cut away part of my heart. But who wants to do that?
But the danger in not doing that is the rot, is the same thing as the water damage in a house. If you don't cut it away, it spreads. I mean, that's the one thing. We had our gutters replaced on my old house, and the shingles have been back a little bit. And one of the, when you saw what happened with the rot, because it starts off as a little thing and then it spreads and it spreads. And if you don't deal with it, it can spoil the whole thing. So, I mean, we have to be willing to look at the heart, and we have to be willing to get part of it away. Or else it just becomes the lip service that we were afraid of doing in the first place.
But we're dealing with humans. We're not dealing with robots. And humans fear. That's why we're afraid of needles. That's why we're afraid of going to the dentist. That's why I'm afraid of going to the doctor, because he's going to find something, which is a horrible way of thinking about if he's going to find something, it's already there. But it's going to be verified, and it's going to be a reality that I'm going to have to face. Change is going to necessitate in my being. I can't eat bread. I can't have beer. I can have chicken wings. I can't have ice cream. Yeah. Change is hard.
But we are taught fear is not of God. Right? Like our fear is how the devil stops us from seeing the sin in our lives, from stopping us to be willing to suffer for to root that guck out of our lives, and the fear that you're going to be healed. You're saying you're fearful that the doctor wants to help you get better. Like that's not a super logical thing, but that's just what we do, because we have someone who desires us to be fearful of what could be good, and we just can't see it. But we need to be willing to be have to go through a bit of suffering, and to find redemption on the other side. And I just feel really encouraged that I'm gonna, faith versus works. I'm all sort of on the go for, I think every Catholic talk I've ever heard before coronavirus was pray, just spend 3 minutes in prayer. You very, very rarely hear some say go out, volunteer at anywhere. And so I'm gonna be challenging myself that like have more time, while keeping with social distancing measures, to like pray, but then go like let's go out there and like let the Holy Spirit let us on fire. Let us go suffer where it's gonna hurt. Let's make messes and fail a bunch, but then like do better because we want to bring unity instead of division. I'm just feel really encouraged, guys. Also, I have more time because I don't have a job, so.
Well, and I think in particular, the church is going to need that. We're going to need hands, because, if this is going to drag on for another months, another year, whatever it's going to be, a lot of the people that were on the ground doing the jobs that we just let do the jobs, well, they're not there anymore. Right? They're not in house right now. And so if this work's going to happen, it's going to require us to step up and hear God's call to, again, be converted and then do something with it.
Yeah.
Because Father Roger can't do all of it himself, most of it, but not all of it.
Yeah. Smeagol gets out of that cave, I think, if I remember correctly.
And if there's anyone who knows how to get rid of bats, please call Father Roger, and help him catch the bats, and get them out of his parish, because he needs help with that. That's part of the 15% he can't do.
Yep. I just don't know.
Bring him chicken wings when you do it.
That would be, yeah, if you could. Salt and pepper. No barbecue. It's too much carbs.
Perfect. Okay, we're on it, Father. Okay, well, on that note, let's go and do something. Do you have final thoughts, Father? Chicken.
It's a conversation we're going to have to have again, and again and again and again, and not grow tired of having the conversation, of reviewing how things are going, what we are doing, and sort of build each other up during this time, when we are being asked to have that change within us, right? I don't know if I have any final thoughts. Those were words, but not really thoughts. Yeah.
It's interesting when you hear about unprecedented times, right? That's been the phrase repeated over and over and over and over again. It's unprecedented. And it's interesting because we often talk about the fact that the church lives in eschatological times, to use a big word, which is kind of the already but the not yet. Jesus has died and risen again, and we're already there, but we're not yet there. So in a lot of ways, the entire age of the church has been unprecedented times. And, I don't think in the early church they looked and they looked at the mountain that was to be climbed and said, well, we're never going to possibly climb that. Look at the size of this Roman Empire. Look at, all these things that are working against us. They had this conversion experience in their hearts. The Holy Spirit fired them up and they went. And I think that's the piece that we need to kind of look at. Rather than being overwhelmed at what Father Roger, what we don't know, let's take what we do know, and that's that we have a God who's bigger than coronavirus. We have a God who's bigger than the dead things in our heart that need to be cut away, who wants to give us a new heart. And we need to go with him wherever he leads us, even if it's uncomfortable and doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Thanks, guys, for all further insight and encouragement. And we'll have another conversation about this because, like Father Roger said, we can't stop. So that'll be good when we do it. Maybe next time we should all get our own swimming pools and recreate the pools in our own houses. So,
Sure. Sounds like a plan to me.
Mike?
Like and subscribe.
You have one, you have kids.
And if you want to date Sarah, call us and we'll set you up.
Oh, God.
Thanks, friends.